Welcome back to another video. It's your favorite math professor here, Dr. Tarcia Hubert, and in this video we're going to talk about how to factor trinomials. Okay, there are two different types of trinomials we're going to factor. This is the first type in this video, and this is when the leading coefficient is 1. In other words, there is no number in front of your highest degree term, the term with the highest exponent. Okay, so what we're looking at is how do you factor trinomials that look like this: x squared plus bx plus c. Alright, let me show you how. What you want to do is you want to take the factors of c, which is the last number, the constant term. You want to take the factors of c that sum up to b. B is the coefficient of the x. So you want to find, and I like to draw a little chart, you want to find two numbers that multiply to give you c but add to give you b. Whatever those two numbers are, let's just call them, let's say, m and n. Say those two numbers are m and n. Once you have those two numbers, then your trinomial will factor into x plus m, x plus n. And that sign will change based on the sign of those two numbers. So if m is a negative number, it'll be x minus m, and vice versa, okay? So that's what we want to do. We want to find factors of c that add up to b. Let's do some examples. Okay, for this first example, we want to factor x squared plus 8x plus 15. It's a trinomial because it has 3 terms, and the leading coefficient is 1 because there is no number in front of that x squared. There's an understood 1 there, right? So what we want to do is we want to find factors of the constant term, which is 15. We want to find numbers that multiply to give us 15, but add to give us the b term, which is 8, the coefficient of the x. So we want to find two numbers that multiply to give us 15, but add to give us 8. What numbers multiply to give us 15? 3 and 5. 3 times 5 is 15, and 3 plus 5 is 8. So those are the factors that we want. That's my m and n that I said earlier. And so what that means is that this trinomial is going to factor into x plus 5, x plus 3. All right? And that's it. That's all you do when you factor trinomials where the leading coefficient is 1. Now remember, factoring is the opposite of multiplication. So you could check yourself by multiplying this out. So I could go back and multiply this using the box method. X plus 5 across the top. X plus 3 across the side. X times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. X times 3 is 3x and x. And 3 times 5 is 15. Combine these two, 3x and 5x makes 8x, so that gives you x squared plus 8x plus 15. All I was doing there was checking to see if I get what I started with, and I did. That lets me know that I factored it completely correct, okay? Let's look at some more examples. All right, in this next example, we want to factor x squared plus 5x minus 24. This is a trinomial because it has 3 terms. There is no number in front of the x squared. There's an understood 1. So in this case, we want to find factors of the constant term, which in this case is negative 24. You have to keep that sign in front of it. That add up to the b term, which is the coefficient of x, which is 5. So we want to find two numbers that multiply to give us negative 24. But when we add them together, we get 5. So if you start thinking about numbers that multiply to give you 24, 2 and 12 comes to mind. 1 has to be negative. So if I say negative 2 times 12 is negative 24, but when I add those together, negative 2 plus 12, that gives me 10. So those aren't my numbers. Negative 3 times 8. Negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. And when I add those together, negative 3 plus 8, I get 5. Those are the numbers that I want. So those will give me my factors. So this will factor into x minus 3, x plus 8. And it's x minus 3 because the 3 is negative, and it's plus 8 because the 8 is positive. But that's all you do to factor that down. Let's look at one more example. Okay, for this example, we're going to factor 2x squared minus 18x plus 40. Now, this is 3 terms, so it is a trinomial. However, in this case, I have a number in front of the x squared, so it doesn't fall into that case of what I said when your leading coefficient is 1. However, if you remember when we first started factoring, the first thing you should do when you're factoring is factor out a greatest common factor. And if you look at each of these terms, they each have a factor of 2 in them. So I can actually pull out the GCF of 2 here. If I pull out 2 from this first term, I'm left with just an x squared. If I pull out 2 from negative 18x, I'm left with negative 9x. Remember, when you pull it out, essentially you're dividing it. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. And when I pull out 2 from this 40, I'm left with 20, because 40 divided by 2 is 20. And so now inside the parentheses, I have 3 terms with a leading coefficient of 1. So now I can try to factor what's inside the parentheses. So in this case, I would want to find factors of 20. That's 2 numbers that multiply to give me 20, but add to give me negative 9. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me 20, but add to give me negative 9. The first factors that come to my mind is 5 and 4. 5 times 4 is positive 20, but when I add those together, that gives me a positive 9. I need it to be a negative 9. So what I need to do is change the signs on both of those, because negative 5 times negative 4 is also a positive 20. And when I add negative 5 plus negative 4, that gives me a negative 9. So those are the factors that I want, negative 5 and negative 4. So the inside of that parenthesis factors into x minus 5, x minus 4. But I can't leave off that 2 in front. I have to also include that 2 in front because it was a part of the trinomial. So your final answer will be 2 times x minus 5 times x minus 4. All right. And so this is how you factor trinomials when the leading coefficient is 1. You just find factors of the last term that add to the middle term. Pretty straightforward. But if for some reason you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments. And if you want to practice, which I do recommend that you go ahead and sign up for my free course, read the description on how to get access to it, and make sure you go through and practice and make sure you really have a good understanding of these problems. All right. Thank you for watching. If these videos will help you, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.